There is a particular kind of loneliness that no one prepares you for. It arrives not when you are alone in a room, but when you are surrounded by people who cannot hear what you are trying to say. You speak, and the words leave your mouth, but they land in a space where no one is listening, not because they are cruel or indifferent, but because the language you now speak has become foreign to them. You have seen something they have not seen. You have crossed a threshold they have not crossed, and now you stand on the other side of an invisible wall, watching them move through a world that no longer makes sense to you, while they look at you with confusion, concern, or quiet dismissal. You try to explain what you have discovered. You try to share the truth that has shaken the foundations of your life. But the more you speak, the more you see their eyes glaze over, their faces turn away, their bodies shift with discomfort. They change the subject. They offer shallow reassurances. They suggest you are overthinking, being negative, losing perspective, and slowly you learn to stop speaking, not because you have nothing to say, but because you have finally understood that some truths cannot be shared with those who are not ready to receive them. This is the unbearable weight of awakening. Not the awakening itself, but the silence that follows it. You are not imagining this isolation. You are not being paranoid or difficult. Dostoevsky understood this experience more deeply than almost any writer who has ever lived. He spent his entire life exploring what happens to a person when they see clearly in a world that prefers illusion, when they wake up in a society that remains asleep, when they speak truth in a culture that has built its entire structure on comfortable lies. And what he discovered was both devastating and liberating. The awakened soul does not suffer because they are broken. They suffer because they are whole in a fractured world. They are not too much. They are simply ahead, and the world punishes those who arrive too early at truths that everyone else will one day be forced to face. In his novels, Dostoevsky created character after character who lived this exact experience. Raskolnikov, who saw through the moral certainties of society and found himself utterly alone with his terrible knowledge. Ivan Karamazov, whose brilliant mind grasped the contradictions of existence so clearly that he could no longer participate in the comfortable delusions that held his family together. Prince Mishkin, whose purity and honesty were so unsettling to those around him that they eventually destroyed him rather than face what his presence revealed. The underground man, who understood the absurdity of the social world so completely that he withdrew into isolation, unable to bear the falseness of ordinary interaction. These were not fictional aberrations. They were portraits of a particular kind of human being, the one who wakes up too soon, the one who sees too much, the one who speaks too honestly, and the one who learns through bitter experience that the world does not reward clarity. It punishes it. Dostoevsky knew this from his own life. After his mock execution and years in a Siberian labor camp, he returned to society a changed man. He had faced death. He had endured suffering that stripped away every comfortable illusion about human nature, about God, about meaning. He came back with eyes that could see into the depths of the human soul. And what he found when he tried to share what he had learned was resistance, misunderstanding, and isolation. His ideas were too dark for the optimists, too religious for the atheists, too radical for the conservatives, too conservative for the revolutionaries. He spoke a language that belonged to no existing camp, no comfortable category, and so he was misunderstood, attacked, dismissed. But he kept writing, he kept speaking, because he understood something crucial. The awakened person is not speaking to be understood by everyone. They are speaking to be found by the few who are ready to listen. But what does it actually mean to be awake in a sleeping world? Dostoevsky would tell you that it means you can no longer unsee certain truths. You have looked beneath the surface of ordinary life and seen the mechanisms that keep people comfortable, distracted, numb. You have recognized the ways that society functions through collective agreement to ignore uncomfortable realities. You see how people spend their lives pursuing goals that will never satisfy them, chasing pleasures that will never fill their emptiness, building identities on foundations that will eventually crumble. You see the fear that drives most human behavior, the desperate need for approval, the terror of being alone with oneself, the frantic avoidance of any genuine encounter with mortality, meaninglessness, freedom. You see all of this clearly, and once you see it, you cannot participate in it the same way anymore. This is not a choice. It is not a decision you made. It happened to you. The veil lifted, the illusion cracked, and now you are standing in a reality that most people cannot yet perceive. And here is where the suffering begins. Because when you try to share what you see, when you attempt to speak honestly about the truths that have become obvious to you, you encounter something unexpected. Not curiosity, not gratitude, but resistance, defensiveness, anger. People do not want to hear that their comfortable assumptions are built on sand. They do not want to examine the ways they are lying to themselves. They do not want to face the emptiness they are running from. And so when you speak these truths, even gently, even with compassion, they experience you as a threat, not because you are attacking them, but because your very presence reminds them of what they are trying to forget. Dostoevsky called this the burden of the prophet, not because awakened people are holy or special, but because they carry knowledge that others are not ready to receive, and this knowledge makes them dangerous. Not dangerous in the sense of causing harm, but dangerous in the sense of disturbing the peace, the false peace that requires constant self-deception to maintain. In The Brothers Karamazov, Dostoevsky tells the story of the Grand Inquisitor, a parable that reveals this dynamic with devastating clarity. Christ returns to earth during the Spanish Inquisition. He performs miracles. He embodies perfect love and truth. And what does the Grand Inquisitor do? He arrests him. He condemns him. He tells Christ that he must leave because humanity does not want truth. They want comfort. They want security. They want to be told what to do. They want their illusions protected. The Grand Inquisitor understands something profound. Most people would rather live in a comfortable lie than face an uncomfortable truth. They would rather be controlled than free. They would rather sleep than wake up. And anyone who threatens this arrangement, anyone who offers genuine freedom and genuine truth, will be rejected, not because what they offer is false, but because it is too real. This is what happens when you speak from a place of awakening. You are offering something real in a world that has organized itself around unreality, and the world does not thank you. It turns away. It labels you negative, cynical, difficult, too intense, too much. People tell you to lighten up, to stop being so serious. to let things go. They suggest you are depressed, paranoid, losing touch with reality. But the truth is the opposite. You have found touch with reality, and that is precisely what makes you incompatible with the collective dream. Dostoevsky saw that the awakened person experiences a particular kind of madness, not the madness of delusion, but the madness of clarity in a world that has agreed to be unclear. You feel insane because you are the only one in the room who sees that the emperor has no clothes. Everyone else is complimenting the fabric, and when you point out the obvious truth, they look at you as if you are the one who is confused. And so you face a terrible choice. Do you keep speaking your truth and accept the isolation that comes with it? Or do you pretend? Do you put the mask back on? Do you learn to speak the language of the sleeping world again, even though it feels like a betrayal of everything you have seen? Many awakened people oscillate between these two options. They try honesty and are rejected, so they try pretending and feel dead inside. Then they try honesty again, hoping this time will be different, and the cycle continues. But Dostoevsky would tell you there is a third path, not speaking to everyone, but learning to recognize the few who are ready to listen, not broadcasting your truth to an indifferent crowd, but waiting, watching, sensing who has the capacity to hear. This is not about being elitist or superior. It is about being wise. It is about understanding that truth is not for everyone at every moment. Some people are not ready. Some people will never be ready. And that is not your failure. It is simply the way consciousness unfolds at different rates in different souls. In Crime and Punishment, Raskolnikov spends most of the novel utterly alone with his terrible secret. He has committed murder based on an idea, a theory about superior men being above conventional morality. And he discovers that this idea, which seemed so clear in his mind, becomes unbearable when he tries to live it in reality. He wants desperately to confess, to be understood, to share the weight he carries. But there is only one person who can truly hear him: Sonia, a prostitute who has descended into her own form of hell. She does not judge him. She does not offer easy answers. She simply witnesses his suffering. She sees him, and in that seeing, something shifts. He is still guilty. He still must face consequences. But he is no longer alone. Dostoevsky understood that the awakened person does not need everyone to understand them. They need one person, maybe two, maybe a handful. People who have also crossed the threshold, who have also paid the price of seeing clearly, who can sit with uncomfortable truth without flinching away. These people are rare, but they exist, and finding them is the task. Not converting the sleeping masses, not forcing understanding on those who are not ready, but recognizing your own kind when they appear. The way you recognize them is through a particular quality of presence. They do not fill silence with empty words. They do not turn away when conversation becomes deep. They do not offer reassurance when what is needed is honest witnessing. They can hold paradox. They can sit with uncertainty. They can acknowledge darkness without trying to immediately fix it or deny it. When you speak to them, you feel something relax inside you, not because they agree with everything you say, but because they are capable of actually hearing it. They meet you in the depths rather than trying to pull you back to the surface. But until you find these people, and even after you find them, there is still the daily experience of living in a world where most conversations feel hollow, where most interactions require you to perform a version of yourself that is not quite real, where you must constantly translate your actual experience into language that will not disturb or alienate. This is exhausting. Dostoevsky knew this exhaustion intimately. The fatigue of the awakened person is not physical tiredness. It is the tiredness that comes from constant translation, from perpetual self-editing, from living in two worlds simultaneously, the world of what is actually true and the world of what people are willing to hear. You walk through your days speaking a simplified, sanitized version of your real thoughts. You participate in conversations about trivial matters while your mind is occupied with existential questions. You smile and nod while inside you are screaming at the absurdity of the whole performance. And people wonder why you sometimes seem distant, why you grow quiet in groups, why you prefer solitude to superficial socializing. They think you are antisocial. They think you are depressed. But you are neither. You are simply conserving energy. You have learned that most social interaction drains you because it requires constant pretense, and solitude, while lonely, at least allows you to be honest, at least allows you to drop the mask, at least gives you space to think thoughts that would disturb the people around you if spoken aloud. This is not misanthropy. This is self-preservation. Dostoevsky's underground man understood this. He withdrew, not because he hated people, but because he could not bear the falseness of ordinary social life. He could not participate in the cheerful lies, the comfortable certainties, the shallow pleasantries that lubricate social interaction. He saw through all of it, and what he saw made participation impossible. But here is what Dostoevsky also understood. This isolation, as painful as it is, serves a purpose. It is not punishment. It is preparation. The awakened person is being prepared for something, not to save the world, not to convert the masses, but to serve as a kind of witness, a keeper of uncomfortable truths, a voice that speaks from outside the collective trance. You may not know why you are being prepared. You may not see the larger purpose, but there is a reason that some souls wake up before others. There is a reason that some people are given the burden of seeing clearly. It is not random. It is not a cosmic mistake. You have been given a particular kind of vision because something in the larger pattern of existence requires it. Dostoevsky believed that awakened souls serve as advance scouts for humanity. They encounter truths before the collective is ready to face them. They suffer through realizations that will one day become common knowledge. They live through the psychological and spiritual transitions that the broader culture will eventually undergo. This does not make you special in the sense of being better. It makes you a kind of sensor, a canary in the coal mine. You feel the shifts first. You see the cracks first. You recognize the unsustainability of current patterns before they collapse. And yes, this means you suffer first, but it also means you have the opportunity to find your footing before others begin to stumble. You have time to develop the inner resources that will be needed when the illusions finally fall away for everyone, when the comfortable lies stop working, when the distractions lose their power, when the collective awakening begins. And it will begin, not because you convinced anyone, not because you spoke loudly enough, but because reality itself will force the awakening. The structures built on illusion will collapse. The patterns sustained by denial will break. And when they do, the people who have already walked through this process will be the ones who can offer genuine guidance, not because they know all the answers, but because they have already survived the questions. So, what do you do in the meantime? While you wait for others to catch up? While you endure the isolation of being awake in a sleeping world? Dostoevsky would tell you to write, to create, to channel what you see into some form that can outlast your lifetime. He wrote novels that continue to wake people up more than a century after his death, not because he convinced his contemporaries. Most of them misunderstood him, but because he left a record, a testimony, a map for those who would come later and find themselves in the same territory he once walked alone. You may not be a novelist, but you have some way of capturing what you see, some way of leaving traces for others who will one day need them. This is not about fame or recognition. It is about fidelity to what you have witnessed. It is about refusing to let the truth die with you. And while you create, while you wait, while you live in this strange in-between space, you must also learn to protect yourself. Not everyone deserves access to your deepest truths. Not every conversation requires your full honesty. You're allowed to hold back. You're allowed to speak in measured ways. You're allowed to choose carefully who receives what level of disclosure. This is not deception. This is wisdom. Dostoevsky's characters who survived were the ones who learned discernment, who learned when to speak and when to remain silent, who learned to recognize safe harbors and dangerous waters. You must develop this same discernment. Learn to sense who is asking genuine questions and who is simply waiting for an opening to dismiss you. Learn to feel the difference between someone who wants to understand and someone who wants to fix you. Learn to protect your inner world while still remaining open to connection when real connection becomes possible. And finally, Dostoevsky would tell you to remember that your awakening is not complete. You may see more clearly than those around you, but you do not see everything. There are depths you have not yet reached, truths you have not yet encountered, illusions you still hold without knowing it. The awakened person who believes they have finished waking up has simply found a new place to fall asleep. Stay humble, stay curious, stay open to the possibility that you are still in process, that your clarity is partial, that there are others ahead of you just as you are ahead of some. And when you meet those who see further than you do, listen to them the way you wish others would listen to you. This is how the chain continues. This is how truth moves through the world, not through mass conversion, but through intimate transmission from one awakened soul to another across time and space. You are awake, but nobody wants to listen. This is true, and it is painful, but it is not the end of the story, because somewhere, someone is listening. Maybe not today, maybe not in your immediate circle, but your truth will find its way to those who need it. Your clarity will serve those who are ready for it. Your willingness to see and speak will become a lifeline for someone you may never meet. Dostoevsky never knew that a teenager in another century would read his words and feel less alone, that a person on the other side of the world would encounter his characters and recognize their own struggle, that his refusal to pretend would give permission to countless others to stop pretending. You cannot know the reach of your honesty. You cannot measure the impact of your refusal to go back to sleep. But trust that it matters. Trust that awakening, even when it isolates you, is never wasted. Trust that the loneliness you feel is not the final word. The final word is this: you are not speaking into a void. You are speaking into a future where others will desperately need to hear that they are not alone in what they see, that they are not crazy for questioning what everyone else accepts, that waking up, even when it costs you everything comfortable, is still worth it, because a life lived in truth, however isolated, is more real than a life lived in comfortable delusion, however crowded. Dostoevsky knew this. He lived it. He suffered it, and he left us his testimony. Now you must do the same, not for recognition, not for understanding from those who are not ready, but for the ones who will come after you, stumbling through the same darkness, searching for a voice that speaks their language. Be that voice. Even if nobody seems to be listening, someone, somewhere, someday will hear you, and they will know they are not alone.